The HX Collective explores the human experience through three main channels of life: work, relationships, and self. With raw, authentic conversations, the podcast investigates how challenges can become powerful teachers, leading to personal growth and deeper connections. Rooted in humanity-centered design, each episode reflects a commitment to doing good and doing well, featuring diverse voices and generational perspectives. Expect gripping stories of struggle and success, with thought-provoking discussions and concrete tools and tactics that encourage you to rethink your relationship with distress, helping you to establish your full human experience. This is the HX Collective channel. Well, hello, friends. Welcome to our next episode of the HX Collective podcast, where today we have a very special guest. In fact, it's not often that I get to bring someone into the realm of human flourishing and talking about the mission in a way that I count this person as a mentor and one of the most important people who has helped me be successful as a business person, as a parent, and as an individual. So I am thrilled today for you all to meet Armond D'Inverno. He is the former founder and co-president of a private wealth management firm. At the time, it was known as Balasa Dinverno Foltz, or as we like to say, BDF, where he was the D in BDF. And when I tell you, not only as a founder of this incredibly successful firm, he took it all the way to a meaningful transition and exit. And he's got so much wisdom to share with us today about the importance of leadership, how cultural values are really the difference maker in having a great exit and a successful team. And he's got a lot of wisdom and reflection. So if you are a leader in any aspect of your life, you're not going to want to miss a minute of this conversation. So Armond, welcome, welcome. I love that you said yes to this. I mean, you are on the other side of what I think a lot of people are thinking about in terms of retirement. But I mean, let's face it, there's no such thing as retirement in an Armond D'Inverno world, in the sense that you're still very active and have so many good things going on in life. But today is an opportunity for us to reflect and learn. And so as we get into the conversation, I would love for you to share a little bit with the audience, a little bit about your background, and sort of walk us through the journey on how does one have the courage to step out there and build a business really from scratch and have it become such a huge success. So welcome. Thank you for saying yes.
Sure. And thank you for asking, Deb. And hi, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to share. I've been retired for 5 years. So this is the first time I'm really reflecting. So reflecting in a formal way. It's an interesting experience for me. So I came out of school as a CPA and an attorney. I went to work for Price Waterhouse. And that was great. Got a tremendous amount of experience. Met one of my partners, Mike. And as an attorney, I just thought we should practice law. I mean, that's what we went to school for. That was our background. And so we were there for 2 years, and then we left it and started a law firm, a small corporate practice, estate planning, tax practice. Out of that, we just decided that that's what we should do.
Well, in doing something that entrepreneurial, and, a lot of times I think people see the safety of moving into more established firms or being in an environment where, having more infrastructure. What was your original vision, not only for the law firm, but then how did private wealth management get into the picture?
And so we were practicing law, and actually, it's a really funny story. So many things happen in our lives that are happenstance or accidents or just things you run into. We were running space to a guy in the investment industry, and we were watching what he was doing, and we were doing law work, and he was doing investment work. And in the law business, we were in an hourly business, and hours mattered, and it was just how many hours you clocked. And that was it was a hard business. And we're looking at the investment business with our accounting and tax background. We thought, well, we could do that. So we started in '84. We started the law firm. In 1986, we started the wealth management firm just because of that, because we thought that might be a better business for us than the hourly billing practice.
I love it. Well, first of all, let that be a voice of encouragement for people. Like sometimes you can catch a good idea just by being eyes wide open and the proximity of that. And, when you think about that shift and really just building into an industry that wasn't as familiar to you as what you had studied, although, as you said, having the CPA background, certainly there's a lot of kindred, that finance and kind of kindred connection. What were some of the leadership choices that you all made in sort of those early days that ended up paying off really well for you when you look back long term?
There were a whole bunch, but we started that business, and you kind of alluded to, well, how did I end up doing that? Well, you talk so much at this stage of my career, and you talk so much about strategy, but the truth is, it's just a leap of faith. I grew up in a family business, so that was obviously something I was used to. My wife was tremendously supportive, Kitty, in me starting this business, and we just thought that it was the time to do it. And so we did it, not necessarily knowing where we would go, but just thought now is the time, even though Kitty was pregnant with our first child and we had just bought a home. Many think that is absolutely crazy, and maybe it was, but we thought, well, we're going to take a run at this. So epiphanies, I thought about this question for us, and there were so many. And so the first one I had running our law firm, because we are a law firm and a wealth management business. We were a jack of all trades, master of none. And so after a couple of years of doing that, my partner Mike and I decided, well, we should really focus one guy in our law firm and one guy in our wealth management business and develop some specialization in depth in that industry. And so, and the reason is because we thought we could be better for our clients. To be a master of something and really help our clients or our customers is really key to so many things we're going to end up talking about today. So that was really the first one. And I decided on the wealth management business just because numbers actually were more my thing than practicing law. The second epiphany was that another really important was, did I have the skills to continue to grow the business? And being introspective, we got to a point where I just didn't think I had all the skills I needed. In so many areas, as you grow your business, even in the beginning, you're really just a technician of the business and you're working in the business. When you decide to turn it into a business, you need many more skills. I just came to the conclusion that, you know what, I didn't have all those. I was trying to get them, but, frankly, my head was going to explode. There were so many things going on, which is so common to entrepreneurs. And so I had a friend of mine, Mark, the B in the BDF, and Mike was the F in the BDF, Mark. And I thought we could merge our business, and his skill set was completely different than mine. And putting those two skill sets together would really help the business flourish. So BDF took off from there. So it was the merger was critical to our success. The third epiphany is that I needed coaching from outside our business. It's inside your own four walls. You're learning a lot, you're growing, you're being challenged, but you're not getting the perspective from someone outside the business. And frankly, Deb was our first great coach that we hired. And she was so critical in helping us understand what was going on in the business as she was helping coaching a lot of our people. And then my partner, Susan, suggested that we hire Rita as an executive coach, another level of coaching for our people. And ultimately, I ended up using it myself, just trying to be better than I was and be the best version of myself that I could be. And then the fourth epiphany was, so we had all this coaching, business was going along great, but I was taking too much air out of the room in my leadership style. And I thought that I really needed to shrink myself in the room of our business people, the people on our team, because they had their own great ideas. But as a founder, you carry an aura into the room, you carry a certain style. And no matter how hard you try to diminish that, it's really difficult. And so I really began to work hard at getting out of the way of our people and letting them flourish. But the reality is it's trial and error. We made 1,000 mistakes along the way, but those are the learnings. So those were, as I thought about, those were the four big leadership things that I stumbled into with your help and Rita's help and many other people's help along the way.
Well, there's so many fantastic takeaways, and I want to reiterate them again. If I'm listening, if I was an audience member listening to our discussion, I cannot underestimate or underemphasize how important your epiphanies are for people to really take to heart because they're timeless. What's interesting, though, is the timing of taking these risks and choices. Even something like thinking about, how important it is to be client centered. There are a lot of professional services firms that get that right now. But the idea of getting that specialization and really bringing a level of excellence in service to a client or a customer, that was a really big idea when you think about the timing of when you're doing it. So you move from that technician of client service to then your second big epiphany, which again is to look at growth. I remember one of my favorite things you gave me counsel as a small business owner is you've got to spend time not only working in your business, but you got to work on your business. And so having that growth mindset and recognizing that the merging with Mark's firm, how critical and important that is. Again, having a growth mindset earlier in your business, even when you were small, I think is so important. You were an absolute early adopter for coaching. And I think it's so important for folks to recognize that as brilliant as I know in your understanding now, listening to Armand as he is, he always sought outside advice and perspective. And that is such a sign of competence, such a sign of courage and a willingness to be vulnerable. And so I think again, what a great epiphany. And now let's transition to that awareness of yourself, because I think a lot of times when we think about, well, first of all, the work that we did together and how do you build a team and how do you build a culture, you can't allow yourself as the leader be too big. You've got to be really mindful. And, and during our work together, you had so many ahas along the way. One of my favorite moments with you is we kind of transition into establishing the culture of BDF at the time is this planning your management by walking around. Now, you have no shortage of great books that you have read on business and leadership. And I know, again, one of the inspirations was not just to be doing the technical part of running a company, but actually how do you build time with people? And if I'm not mistaken, I think in the early days, you actually scheduled your management by walking around time. Tell us a little bit about that aha, because I think that was a significant shift in how these 4 epiphanies started to really manifest into something meaningful for the team.
Sure. Well, starting your own business there's no like rule book for it. There's a million books, but no single book that tells you how to do that. So you just start your business. You're working really hard. Oftentimes you're working in your office really hard or on your factory floor really hard or whatever your business is. And you forget that it's all the other people in your firm that are critical to the success of your business. Or I don't know if you forget or you don't realize how important it is to stay in touch with them, not just the work that you have. So I did schedule it on my calendar. And it was so important to get outside of my office. Number one, to show them that I cared about them. It just wasn't about me and my work in the office. It was about work they were doing, our people. Second, to learn from them about their jobs because they know how to do their jobs better than I know how to do their job. Better things that we could be doing to help them do their job. What mattered to them, I would learn. That's key. And in as a casual, it wasn't a one-to-one. It wasn't a scheduled meeting on their calendars. I would just be walking around chatting, whoever was here, there, or anywhere. And then the last thing is feeling the culture of the firm. Getting back from them what they were feeling by how they were talking to me, the experiences they were sharing, as opposed to what happens is you roll something out and in your own mind it's working perfectly, but maybe it's not in your people's mind. And so you've got to get out there and feel from them how are things going.
Well, I recall after a certain period of time where you were doing this, just how delighted you were when you were getting to know people on a more personal level and just the informality of bumping into somebody. You guys always had a great break room. And not to mention, I'll just say as a side note, always stocked with great snacks and great sodas and coffee. But there was a lot of that just really wanting to understand people and who they were when they weren't at work. And to do that in a very informal and not in an intimidating way, it was a strategy that was really working well for you. I know once that started to really kick in, then we went into a whole season of, okay, this is going to be important to establish culture. And you became the most voracious reader of leadership and business books just to get little nuggets of insight and wisdom on what are other things that you could be doing to really establish this kind of a relationship based culture. So, share with us what are some of the additional principles or maybe ideas or even authors that you inspired you and that were important to you in establishing your know how as a leader, building a culture?
Sure. So one thing you were talking, David, reminds me of one of the things you told me. Because one of my strengths, and for all of us, our strengths are their strengths and weaknesses. Is I want to be very efficient. I want to hit my target. I want to be on budget. It's for me, it's all about hitting the target. And I remember one time talking to you before I started management by walking around, and you said to me, Armand, relationships aren't efficient. And I never really thought about it in that way, but it really was that building relationships with your people, that's not an efficiency thing. It's it's a time things. It's spending time with them. And so that's really where the origin of that came. But it's just a funny, so, I was just trying to hit the target, but that's not the same feeling is when you're just visiting with people chatting. Books I read, yeah, I did become, I just felt growing the business, I needed help. I wanted to read things that I think could move our firm along. The first one was the E Method. It's been around a long time, but it goes to this whole concept you mentioned about, when you start a business, you're just working in the business. But if you're going to build a business beyond yourself, you have to begin to work on the business, which oftentimes means leaving the true love of working in the business for working on the business. And that's an area where a lot of entrepreneurs struggle in that transition. And you don't have to, of course, transition to do that. But if you want to build your business to a size, you have to make that transition. So that was one of the first books that really had me focusing, gosh, I'm just working in this business every day and I'm not working on it. From there, then the Patrick Lencioni books, I thought were just fabulous. There's so many of them, but they're all about culture and team, about values and what matters. I think they're a great, great group of books. There may be 10 of them by now. I don't exactly know, but have you recommended another one? What was it? Strategy and the Fat Smoker or Fat Smoker and Strategy?
Yeah, no,
Uh, uh,
Strategy and the Fat Smoker. Great
yeah,
book. David
yeah.
Maister.
Another great one. I remember I went to Harvard for a class on running a law firm because while we were a wealth management firm, it's a professional practice. And so there was a week-long Harvard class on running a professional service firm. I read a number of books out of the professional services environment to learn how to run because we were a wealth management firm, but we were fee only, so we were professional service oriented. And then one of the ones I remember want to share with everyone is the one by Clayton Christensen. How will you measure your life? When you think about what you're doing with your life and what your business, why you have your business and what your business is there for, that's a good book to give you. It's a short one. It's an easy read. It gives you some decision making models for how to think about things when you're trying to decide. What does my life really represent? And at the end of the day, how am I measuring my life? Is an important question to be asking, especially if you're on the journey of deciding what you want to do with your business. So I really enjoyed that one.
I'm so appreciating the walk down memory lane and really the timelessness of so many of the books that you're reminding. And again, the recommendation when you've given me counsel to just get that outsider's perspective. And I think that's really a through line in a lot of the leadership and cultural success of the firm was that willingness to keep it fresh. We mentioned in the opener about clients, and I can say with high confidence the type of coaching that we were doing was all about business generation, client experience, really focusing on growth that was in service to clients. Tell us a little bit about how, as in establishing core values, how ultimately that helped be in greater service to the client and really to the team members themselves as well. Tell us a little bit about those values.
What it really came down to in building our business was I just wanted our business to be the best it could be. It wasn't about size. It was about, are we making a difference in our people's lives? I would always tell our people, when you put your head on the pillow at night, do you feel really good about the work that you did that day? And that's not easy to have in our work lives. We don't always feel that, but I wanted to feel that, and I wanted our people to have that feeling. So that was really the driver for me is how do we be the best we can be as a firm that's for our people and for our clients. And so we came up with, we used the Lencioni values. He's got a book, The Ideal Team Player, and it just spoke to me and our team. This was a team, whole team decision-making process we went through. But the three that he's got, I really like them. You have to decide all these things on your own, running your own business and what it means to you. But for me, the first one was humble, which meant team before self. And so if you want great teams, be they sports teams or other teams or business teams, is it about the individual or is it about the team that makes that company successful? At different stages in a company's path, it can be one or the other. But ultimately, as you grow it, you need the team to be successful. The second was hungry, which was driven, hardworking, and dedicated people. obviously key to serving customers or clients. I mean, you know, each one of us here, you know in your heart when you have an experience with a business, whether that person is really interested in helping you. And when you meet people, you can feel whether they're the type of person that is really interested in helping you or just checking the box. And you know, we know that is, it's just hard to make that a discipline in finding people like that. And the third was smart. This is really, really a good one. Not IQ, EQ. Do you understand yourself? Do you understand your impact on others? And how are you helping yourself be the best version of yourself? Because we all have an effect outside of ourselves in our work lives, the people around us, the people we work with in terms of values, what do you know about yourself? And how are you helping yourself help the people around you? And that's really understanding your impact on others and how you manage that impact. And so those were the what we created for our farm. And not only as an aside, not only from, you know, poster on the wall and that stuff, but it was in performance reviews, it was in compensation. You have to drive them through every part of your organization. You know, so many companies just put it up on the wall. Everyone knows that doesn't mean anything until you hire and fire on it and until you compensate on it. And that's really a key component. And then your people will believe, yeah, they mean business on these things.
Well, I can say one additional anecdote, I asked this in the name of clients and how it's really good for the team. I can tell you it's also really good for your suppliers because the humble, hungry, and smart were core values in which you were evaluating outside service providers. It was the way that you would work with centers of influence and referral sources. And so again, it's not simply put it on the wall like you're a fast food restaurant with your core values and mission. It's like, how does it get woven through every aspect of your business so you can truly be high performing? I can say there was never a conversation you and I weren't using some kind of sports analogy. And we were always winning a championship or going to the Super Bowl. And, when you think about that idea of having a high performing culture, and from your vantage point, how is when you drive a lot of growth when we were doing, sales growth, growing, clients and customers. It'd be tempting sometimes to think of that as an act of self-interest, but in reality, it was an extension of a high-performing culture. How does that tie to profitable sales growth and great client experience?
It's not obvious, especially when you're starting, because you know, when you started your business, I mean, for me, I was just trying to feed my family. I'm just trying to make a living. I mean, yeah, I love starting the business, but I got to feed my family. And so one of the early decisions we had to make, getting to where you want me to go, is what's number one in our business? Is it profits? Is it our clients? Or is it our people? It's really a core distinction what you put as number one. And so I made the decision it was going to be about our people. And we had the BDF Circle of Life from the Lion King, of course. We had 4 young children at that. And so it was about our people because I figured if I took care of our people, they would take care of our clients. As simple as that is, not always obvious. If we took care of our clients, they would take care of the firm. And so the bottom line wasn't in that circle of life. I figured it would be a natural outgrowth because they would take care of our clients who would stay at the firm and continue to grow with us, who would continue to stay with the firm, and then we could continue to stay. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy if we could execute on that well. And so that's what we did. And obviously, thankfully, it worked. I didn't know if that was going to work, but it didn't matter because to me, it was be about the best we can be. The firm might have not been so successful, or maybe it could have been more successful if I had chosen other routes, but was not the criteria. To me, it was, are we the best we can be for our people and our clients who take care of the firm? Plus, when you think about profits, it's about your self-interest. Profit, goes to the owners of the business, go to the bottom line. It doesn't go to the clients or customers. So how is thinking about what matters to you as a business owner help your client or your customer? It really doesn't. And so if you take a step back and you think, you know what, I'm going to get a much bigger return if I put my people first and my clients or customers first than if I just think it's about the bottom line. 'Cause people can tell the difference too. Buyers of your services, users of your product can tell the difference in what you're focused on by these things and how you treat them.
You were so ahead of your time. I think that it is so tempting when you look at, the order of values and how often it's very much about the financial profitability or shareholder value, then it's always about the client or customer, and then people often get put at the bottom. And the fact that you made that the highest priority, and I saw it play out, and it's really a great segue as we think about what, ultimately, how did it pay off? How did it turn out? And, as we talk about succession planning and we talk about business continuity, it's exciting that the people core value was always number one. And yet you had an exit. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit, you know, as a founder of your business, what vision you had as you thought about, long term. There were a lot of different scenarios for succession planning and for business continuity. So as the firm, it was growing, you had high retention of great people, high retention, 98% plus client retention. And so then there was that moment as a founder where you're like, okay, what's the next generation gonna look like? So walk us through a little bit of that transition and how you thought about the vision for succession planning and business continuity.
Sure. I just want our listeners and people watching this to know that while it may all sound like it was all planned, it wasn't. All of this was trial and error and learnings. And so don't think, I had these ideas that Deb is sharing and asking me about in the beginning. I didn't. It was a journey. And so we didn't have a succession plan in the beginning. Truth be told, we just were starting the business, trying to build a business. And then, going back to the many things I've already talked about, you have to decide, well, how are you going to exit this business? How are you going to keep your people? How are you going to keep your clients, your customers? How are you going to exit this business? And going back to making our people number one, well, if we could make some of our best people owners in our business, well, that serves them well too. And so it's just another evolution of, well, let's do that because that tells them they're a priority to us. We want them to share in the success of the firm, be a part of the future of the firm. This is a long-term thing. It's not a short-term thing. And so we decided to make partners of the people in our firm to have them share in the growth and success of the firm. But that's really a critical juncture because it is a legal arrangement. And so, as a business owner, you're thinking, geez, how does this entangle me? But again, you have to have the confidence that you've got the right people and you're doing this with the right people. And that the reason you're doing it is because you want them to be a part of the future and share in the success of the firm to take care of your clients and customers.
Well, to do that, as you said, you're not only as the founders, you're taking on, these arrangements and the risk, and yet at the same time, as founders, you also had to figure out a way to make more room. And I think notwithstanding, there was a lot of trial and error. Let's agree. But we're now listeners are getting the benefit of this, like you said, it was like a whole recipe we built out that we like these were the steps. But when you think about what was essential for all three of you, the B, the D, and the F, what did you have to do to make room so that you could make owners and make room for next generations of leaders so that they could step up?
Yeah, it comes a thought comes on. Steve Jobs once said, "Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." And so the simple thing was, we need to get out of the way. That's not rocket science. But you know what? So the founders were all involved in different areas of the firm. But until we got out of the way and let our people take over some of those areas and run with their ideas, the firm was still going to be dependent on us, which meant, number one, it meant we weren't giving them room to grow. Number two, it meant we couldn't really see the talents of our people because we weren't letting them run the business. And so it was a real learning on both sides to get out of their way, let them run parts of the business that they were good at. And we could really see what their talents were. They could see their talents. They would grow just like we grew. Because it goes back to the comment that I made before about, the impact of an owner, a founder, when you walk in a room. You've got it, whether you think you do or not. And how you manage that is really key. And you have to manage that. And it goes back to, because when you start your business, you're the end all be all of that business. You start the business, you want it to succeed. But over time, you've got to shrink yourself. And that goes against the idea of why you started the business. But if your vision for your business is to have a larger business, you can't be the end all be all anymore. And you have to basically become less important, which for a lot of people, the reason they're in their business is because they want to be important. But if you want to grow your business, you have to become less important and pick your spots where you're important. I'm not saying you're not important at all, but pick your spots and then share some of the other spots with all the other people.
Well, Armand, that's a really interesting consideration because I saw it play out in real time. Sometimes, like you said, sometimes founders, you're running your business because of your own sense of self importance. I think for you, it was joy. You just like working. I mean, you were just really good at the business. So you liked being a part of those things. But as you said, epiphany number four was realizing that the size of your personality, the size and style of your leadership wasn't creating enough room for people. And so I thought it was a pretty big and I'll say ballsy move when you were willing to kind of step outside even of attending some of, kind of key meetings where you allowed other leaders to really step up. And in fact, we didn't even call them next generation leaders. They called themselves Gen Now. So it wasn't Gen 1, Gen 2, it was Generation Now. But the willingness to not have to, have so much control where I had to be in the meeting, I had to approve the agendas, and really making for some space. Is there any wisdom that you can glean? Because like you said, you didn't step out, like, you were still important, and we're gonna talk about, what happened ultimately when you sold the business. But to be able to give yourself the courage to say, "I gotta make myself smaller so this gen now can make itself bigger." Any additional takeaways that you would give us in your own thought process?
The only thing I could share is the bottom line is it going to be about you or about your people? And because you're when we all start our business, we're very proud to have our own business. Being an entrepreneur, being an owner of a business, your ego's involved, who you are in your community is involved, what you say when you meet people every day is involved, and you have to decide, which part of that's going to be first and foremost. And it was a journey. I think it's a journey all along the way for business owners. I mean, the first bridge I had to cross was I couldn't work on clients so much. I did love running our business. I did love working in our business. I still am so fond of our business and everyone we were involved with, yourself and everyone else that we worked, because I absolutely loved it. But ultimately, the goal, I didn't think it was right, is to be about me. And so the first bridge I had to cross again was not working on so many clients so I could work on the business. And then the next bridge was not only me working on the business, but giving room for other people to work on the business. And it's not an easy thing to do because basically making yourself smaller, making yourself less important, frankly, making the business so they can exist without you. When you talk about succession planning, you talk about building a great firm, talk about transitioning your firm, you want your business to be able to exist without you because the buyer wants to be able to buy a business that can exist without you. If you're building a firm where the business can't exist with you in it, that's not as valuable as a firm that can exist without you. And so you have to think about that. And it's a hard journey to be on because basically you put yourself out of a job over a long period of time, or you pick narrow spots, but they're not as front and center as they were. You're not the quarterback every day like you were. You're not calling every play. You're calling some plays, but not all of them. One of the analogies I used to do is, first that made me think of this step. First, I was a player on the field when I started the business, and I was running the plays and calling the plays. Then I was the coach on the sideline, watching the players, and then I became the owner up in the box. So now I'm not even near the field anymore, right? And each step of that removes you from actually running the business. And the thing is, now there's some owners. We all know there's some owners that are very involved with what's going on the field. But are those the best teams that you're watching, either in business or in sports? Or are the best teams the ones that let their people run it and let their people, their coaches make decisions, let their players make decisions? There's many ways we can all build our business. You have to decide what way is right for you.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important piece of, choosing the path that is authentic to the goals and the outcomes that you have. And so you ultimately sold. And having seen what has happened even since the sale of the company, talk us a little bit about when you made the choice that there was going to be some type of exit, including a new buyer. How did you decide that you were going to go the path of a strategic buyer as opposed to maybe other options that private wealth management firms were taking or professional services firms are taking? How did you make that call or and decide that that was going to be the right path?
Sure. Well, of course, it was a team call. Many people were involved in that process inside our organization. A good number of our owners were involved in that decision as well. So basically, we loved our business and we wanted to be successful in the form it was in. We were a fee only business. People were first, our clients were next. The firm, we wanted the buyer to have that same priority. And so, when you interview buyers of your businesses and you go through the process, you really have to discern, are we aligned in what matters to the business? And it's there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on. So you've got to be paying attention. But it just that was it. Are these people going to allow our business, the buyers of the business, going to allow our business to continue to be successful in the vein of serving our clients and taking care of our people and serving our clients? And that was the critical factor for us. We even talked about this much. Well, a little bit I did, but you've got to know what your number one is in decision making. What's really driving you? What is your number one on whatever point you're discussing? Because it's a filter for all the other noise that's going on when you're trying to make decisions in your business. And it can be hard. It can be very hard. Your new competitors are doing some things and new firms are starting this and other people are investing in this. But what's our number one? And our number one is we loved our business, we loved our clients, and we wanted them to be treated, our people and our clients, in the same way. So we wanted to find a buyer of our firm, a partner of our firm that would do that. And that was the biggest driver.
And I would imagine in thinking about that is a critical and key success factor in finding that alignment. Are there any other factors now that you have had the time to see it play out? And, again, the rest of the story, it not only as the firm continued in serving clients in the current structure, but has become a part of something way larger. And the continuity was actually there. So are there any other success factors that people can consider in addition to really aligning around those core values of the people, the clients in the firm, and really thinking about it in that way? Anything else that you can glean on how it's been able to be successful in this current iteration or journey?
One thing I would say is, first of all, you have to have in hiring in your own business, you have to hire great people. And when you look at a buyer of your business, you have to look at their people and say, are we aligned? Are their people the great people that we would want at our firm? And are their values similar to our values? And so you've got to get to know people. You've got to talk to the buyer a fair amount to get an understanding of how are we aligned on values. And again, you have to start with your number one is. Is it the biggest check you're going to walk away with? Is that the number one? Is it the values part the number one? Is the opportunity for your people and your clients the number one? 'Cause we had great people and a great majority of our people are still at the farm. And 5 years later, we're very proud of that. All of us are very proud of the fact. And obviously those people are staying because they want to be there. And they feel that it's the right place for them. And so that we're happy with the decision that we made because they're flourishing and the business is doing very well.
Well, and here's I think and again, just as a postscript, a lot of the people that you hired are now leading and playing major leadership roles in the new entity and the business that, that ultimately purchased or bought BDF, bought a lot of other businesses like BDF. And it is uncanny to see how your cultural values in the original business deal, how those have played out. There's a lot of other BDFs. And there is such a pride that I see that all these great people that you mentored and trained up from their entry level roles are now in executive leadership roles. So, listeners, pay attention to what Armand is saying. Like the rest of the story is really playing out so well. Well, as we reflect, and I could talk to you for hours. So I am so happy we got a chance to do this, but I would love for some final reflections from you for today's discussion. And if you were coaching, that 30-year-old person or, 40-year-old person, are there things that you would advise, your 30-year-old self to do the same? And then, of course, what would you advise to do differently? But first, what are some of the things you would coach your young self, knowing what you know now, to do the same? And then we'll get the learnings of what would be different.
Yeah, it's really a challenging question because you end up because of things that happen along the way. If I did things differently, well, maybe I would have ended up in a different spot. But I mean, the things that I would do, I mean, putting our people first was key component. Finding the right partner and the right people working in our firm, and just, thinking about the firm being something other than yourself. There's so many things in there that you have to think about. Of course, part of the talent some of our listeners may have is where the stage that their business is at, they're not ready for some of these things. So you can't implement all of these things necessarily in the beginning, but along the way, you've got to be thinking about them. And there may be time and space for you as an owner of your business to make these changes. But the biggest thing is to be open to the fact that things are going to change depending on the path you want for your business. And you've got to be open to that. And you've got to be open to the fact that you're going to need to decide, is it about you or is it about the people and the clients? Because depending on how important it is to you that the business be about you, that may affect how it grows. It may not affect how it grows. But nevertheless, I had the joy of seeing many people flourish. And I mean, I love that. I mean, I love that. And that was exciting to me because I really felt it was became my job. My job was to help other people be successful. And I would continue to do that because that's going to best serve your clients and best serve the future of your business.
I love it. And it is so true. And it really does come back to that joy of flourishing. And so much of leadership and culture is about elevating other people's human experience. And so I'm so pleased that you've given us that insight. Anything you do differently if you had to do it over again?
Yeah, I mean, there's, of course, in hindsight's always 2020. Again, it's those learnings that get you where you're going. And so, focusing on culture earlier would have been key. When you've got one or two or three people, you don't really think much about culture, and you don't want to spend that much time working on it with two or three people. But yet, as your firm grows, it does matter. So I guess many of the things we've talked about today, starting working on them earlier would have helped our firm. But frankly, I don't know that I would have been ready for that. I don't know that I would have been open to that. Because when you start your business, you think you have the answers, or you believe you have the answers. That's why you're starting your business. And so you believe you can do it on your own. I mean, you have to have that confidence. Otherwise, you likely don't start a business. And so it's a little bit of both. But looking back, yeah, it's some of the things I could have started earlier on. One of which is making myself smaller. But it's hard because you love what you do, and you don't want to take away the things that you love to do. And sometimes you need to for the betterment of the business.
It's so good. So, so good. Well, one thing that we haven't touched on, and we could have a whole nother conversation, is that in addition to building a fantastic business that is had an exit and is flourishing and thriving, you have a flourishing and thriving family. And getting started, Kitty is Armand's wife. She is a rock star. And I will tell you on the record, when they say the most important decision you're ever going to make is who you marry, Armand and Kitty Dinverno are I mean, talk about squad relationship goals, like for sure. But you've all had such a great success as a father and as a husband and now as a grandfather. Any other wisdom you might be able to glean on how you made that part work? I know I didn't prepare you for this question, but it's so true. I wanted to get the insights out here real time. Is in addition to having so much success professionally, your personal life flourishes as well. Any wisdom you might be able to impart?
Speaking about my wife Kitty, I'd have to say that marrying her was well above my pay grade. So I got very fortunate in that, and she's been a blessing in so many ways. In many ways, the family is the same thing. It's about helping your children succeed and helping them be out on their own. And for me, that meant they have to be able to make their own mistakes. And you have to allow them to make mistakes because that's how if you think of how we all learn, we learn by our mistakes. And so many people hold their children so close that they don't get a chance to make mistakes. And that doesn't help them to be strong children. You know, growing up and living in the world we live in, it's a challenging environment. And you've got to have some strength to continue on in that environment. And you've got to be willing, obviously, in the hopes of having your children be stronger, let them make some mistakes. Let them skin their knees and be okay with that and not coddling them at every turn. Because you've got, just like in the business, make yourself smaller, let your children go out. Now, obviously, there's some railos there, right? You don't want them, hurting, doing some things that can really hurt themselves, just like in your business. But you've got to give them that freedom too. Because again, as a parent, and that's the same in the business. It's not about you as the parent. It's about the child and helping your child be the best they can be. And at a certain point in their life, it's about getting out of their way too and making yourself small and letting them learn on their own from their own decisions. If you don't give them that for me, I think you're handicapping them. And my, just like with our firm, all of our children are out. They have their careers. They're successful individuals in their careers, in their lives. And so I think that we kind of got to set them free, right? I mean, I was thrilled when my kids graduated from college and moved out. That's what my job was, is to set them free and help them to be strong people in their own lives. That to me is now of course they don't need Kitty and I much anymore. So you miss the ego part of you misses the parent part, misses what they don't need us much anymore. But I'm okay with that because they're strong in their own lives and in their own relationships. And that's the key. It's another one of those things. It's all kind of a thread through the whole discussion today is it going to be about you or is it going to be about your clients, your firm, your people, your children? What's the factor?
I love it. And you know what, Armand? It's such a great way for us to wrap because that is the through line. And until you said that, I was like, wow, the very things that you've given us as leadership insights, as business owner insights, absolutely apply as a husband and father insights too. So thank you for that. Well, I always wrap up my segments by asking my guests to do 3 ideas in the next 30 days. And so, on a really practical level, if somebody wanted to elevate human flourishing through their leadership, through their ownership, through their entrepreneurship, what are 3 things that our audience can do in the next 30 days that would make a huge difference in their leadership impact?
Yeah, so I thought about that. Before I answer, let me go to the family thing because raising your children is much like building your business. There's no book for that. You do the best you can. None of us are going to be perfect as parents, and you know what? That's okay. If we build strong children, they'll survive their parents and they'll go on in their own life because we do the best we can. In your business, you do the best you can, and in parenting, you do the best you can, and that's all you can ask of yourself. And don't. It's not going to be perfect. Don't try and make it perfect because there's no rule book for this. Going on to what people can work on. So, in thinking about that, the first thing I thought of was get outside of your business. Think about what the business needs are, and I mean outside your 4 walls. We didn't talk much about strategic planning, but we did strategic planning offsites every quarter with our team. And you've got to get outside of your business to be able to think about your business and think about what are the needs of your business. This is number one. What are the needs of your business today, next year, and we did 3 years from now, and kind of assess what are you trying to accomplish. Number two was then think about the resources you need to accomplish those things. Because if you put goals up on the board or you tell everyone what you're going to do, but you don't put resources or people behind it, it's meaningless. So be very careful when you say where you're going, because then you need to attach things to that, money to that, and people to that. And everyone will quickly see, well, they're not really honest about that because there's no people supporting that and there's no dollars allocated to that. And then assess your people. And yourself. Do you have the right people on the boss? Do you have the right people in your organization to accomplish the things that you're trying to do? Because if you don't, it's going to be hard to accomplish those things. And again, you have to be honest with your own skills too, because maybe I didn't have all the skills and I saw other people who did. Maybe you have all the skills. Maybe you need help in some areas. Maybe you need help in a few areas, maybe a lot of areas, but be okay with that and get the help that you need because none of us have all the tools. And if we think we do, that's probably the first challenge we have is figuring out, you know, let me be open to getting some people who can do things better than I can.
That's well, and what a great parting piece of advice is that ultimately applying not only, as you said, get outside of your business with strategic planning, be really mindful of resources, and then thirdly, assess those people. Sometimes it does begin with taking a minute to assess ourselves and to be able to understand that we can't build something great as an individual, but rather having the ability to pull in resourcing, whether it's inside or outside of our organization. So Thank you. World of wisdom. I think you need to go into podcasting. I'm just going to say that right now. It's been awesome having this discussion with you. I adore you. And I thank you so much for the leadership that you've given me and giving our audience an opportunity to hear your story and to learn from you. So, my friend, I can't wait till our next conversation. Give my best to Kitty and your entire family. And really, thank you on behalf of the HX Collective. We're thrilled to have your voice in the united focus of elevating human flourishing. Be well.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to share some of this with our listeners. And I hope we've been helpful to them. And bottom of my heart, I appreciate all the advice you've given me. And I hope that what we've shared with them will help them flourish. Because again, it goes back to helping other people. And I just want to encourage them to enjoy the journey. It's not a straight line. Enjoy the journey. And life is not about getting to the next stop. It's about enjoying the stop you're at. And so if you learn how to do that, I think you flourish every step along the way, as opposed to just thinking there's a spot I need to get to define flourishing. I don't think that's what it is. For me, it wasn't that. I think you enjoy every stop along the way. In essence, you're flourishing along the way. And last but not least, manage your business. Don't let it manage you. I hope
Yes.
we've been helpful.
Oh, you're the best. I can't wait to see you again soon. Thanks for being here. If today's conversation sparked something in you, we hope you'll carry it forward with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Subscribe to the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep exploring what it means to be fully human.